Hey everybody, welcome back to Watch and Carry. We've got another customer mod for you guys today. This particular one is being sent in by Austin, so thank you Austin for entrusting me with your watch. And this is the factory GShock GW-9400. Now with this particular mod, the customer finds the negative display just a little bit hard to read. This is a non-MIP memory and pixel display. So underneath this direct light that I have here in my work area, it actually looks pretty legible. But if you were to actually bring this out in normal daylight, it does become a little bit hard to read at certain angles. So we're going to go ahead and remove the factory polarizing film here, replace it with a new one, and then orient it 90 degrees as I've done in other videos to get the positive display effect. All right, so we've got a raised bezel here. We've got a soft silicone matte surface, so I don't have to worry about that fragile glass touching and getting scratched. We'll go ahead and disassemble the bracelet first, which will give us better access to the watch. So sometimes you'll have these G-Shocks where the strap actually overlaps into the case back. In this case, we don't have that. So what that tells me is I actually need to remove. I could work on this without removing the strap, but as you can see, when we let go, it closes on itself. With those straps that do overlap on the case back, you have to remove the strap before accessing the inside of the watch. So to get the strap off, let's see here, I don't see any spring bars, so it's probably with these little screws here on the bottom. We'll take a small Phillips and get these out. Now, just to let you guys know, this modification is completely reversible. So should you decide, oh, I want to go back to a negative display, or if you have a positive going into a negative and you want to go back to positive, it's easy enough to just do what I'm going to change in this video. But instead of orienting it, the polarizing film to get that other effect, whether that's positive or negative, you just orient it the opposite way. How we're doing with the video here, just a little bit too bright. Let's dial that down, might be a little bit easier on your eyes. Okay, so there are the 4 screws there, all interchangeable, so it doesn't matter which order you put them back in. And then what that should allow us to do is to lift up on the strap like so. Okay, now we have our case back. So you've got another 4 screws here. These look different than the previous 4, so you don't have to worry about mixing these up. And as you can see here, I have a little screw organizer, so just makes reassembly a little bit easier. Now when we lift up on this case back, we don't want to just lift it up quickly. Sometimes what will happen is the O-ring underneath will cling partly to the case back and partly to the inside of the watch. So if you go ahead and just lift this right away, you might stretch that O-ring, which makes it more difficult to put it back. So we're going to lift up slowly, kind of peek underneath. So I know you guys can't see this. So right now the O-ring is just clinging to the case back so I can lift up safely. And we'll just go ahead and separate this O-ring off. You'll see here that I'm using a guitar pick to separate this off. I'm not prying it again. Again, we want to limit stretching that O-ring. Now, as I'm disassembling parts here, I'm working from left to right on this case, so that way it makes it easier for you guys to track when it comes to reassembly. Okay, so now we've got this part of the watch here. I think we can zoom in just a little bit. Okay, we've got this gray colored piece here. You want to take note of some landmarks. So we have these two little three nubs here. We flip this over. We have the same three nubs. Okay, you'll notice that we have some cutouts here, which makes orienting this during reassembly very easy. Okay, now we have the actual module on the inside. Now with these G-Shocks, they usually have a lot of sensors, especially when you have an ABC watch, which stands for altimeter, barometer, and compass, usually accessed by the big side button there at the 3 o'clock position. So what that tells me, even before I disassemble this, is it's probably going to have a ribbon connector, which you can see right here. And that is attached to one part over here, and it goes into the module. Now, the part that goes into the module can be disconnected, so we need to disconnect that now before taking this apart. So you want to be very gentle here, and of course you can see the circuit board in green underneath there, so I don't want to be using any metal. So I'm just taking some plastic tweezers here, and I'm gently just trying to grip the head of that ribbon connector, not the tail, but the head, and just trying to separate that part out. Taking a toothpick here, again, not in metal. Hopefully you guys can see this on camera. Okay, I felt it move just enough that I think it still looks like it's attached, but I think it's actually detached, and I just have to lift up on the whole module to get it off. Zoom out a little bit. There we go, and we've separated that. You can see the ribbon there is attached to this part of the watch, and that should not be removed. But this is the area where it plugs into over here. Okay, so with that ribbon connector removed, we can go ahead and let's see here. Yeah, let's take care of the display first. Sometimes I put in the new polarizing film because it's actually going to be attached here to the back, or sometimes I go ahead and remove the factory polarizing films first. So we'll focus on the factory film first. I'll go ahead and take the case back and cover that up so we can limit the amount of dust going inside the case. And now we're just going to be focusing here on the module. Now, to get to the display, which is the part facing you, it's like one piece that needs to be lifted. We need to actually disassemble the entire module. You can see here that we have a couple of springs. We have a couple of springs over here, and sometimes on these other G-Shocks there are more springs on the inside that are very, very small, and they're very they're susceptible to rolling and getting lost. So even though I have a pretty grippy silicone mat, I'm going to take a towel, microfiber cloth, and the springs are usually this gold color. So I want to find a towel that will give me some contrast so they're easy to find. So I have this clean microfiber cloth here. I'm just going to lay that down. Not only does this provide contrast to see those springs when they fall out, but it also kind of catches them and doesn't allow the springs to roll too far versus how they would on the silicone mat. Okay, now to get this display off, we have these little tabs on the side. So apologize me for zooming in and zooming out for you guys. I'm just trying to give you guys the best view possible. So another 2 springs here, but these are the tabs we want to focus on. So one over there, another over there. You got 2 on the top, 1 and 2 here, and another 2 on the bottom. So you want to just gently insert something like a lug tool into there, and that will unclip them, and it will start to disassemble the back of the module from the front. So you can see there how I dislodged those clips. Now, as you separate the back of the module more, the display will fade and eventually disappear because the battery is no longer making contact. There's the display flickering a little bit and then finally disappears. Let's see here, let me put one more towel underneath. The one of the little clips on the back of the module is catching on the fibers of this thick microfiber cloth, so I'm going to use a thinner, finer microfiber cloth that makes it harder to catch on those fibers. Okay, so now we can disassemble the rest of this. We're just going to carefully lift up, okay, and take note of anything that falls off. So right away, I've got some springs here. So let me point with the toothpick. It's easier to see on camera. Got a silver colored spring here and 2 gold springs over here. So what I like to do is just take a photo of how things look. Now I have a video, so I'm not going to take a photo right now, but that just reminds me of where each of these springs went. I'm going to carefully remove these. Now the 2 gold springs are the same size and thickness, so I don't have to worry about confusing those. The only thing is the silver colored spring goes in a different location, which is up here. Another thing you can do if this is your own watch is you can take like a little fine tip Sharpie and just mark where you remove springs, so that way it makes it much easier to locate when we reassemble the watch. Okay, so this part, I can just move that to the side. Okay, now we have this part over here. When we flip this over, we have the circuit board. You want to avoid touching this at any cost, even with your fingers. And we need to separate this board off. So let's go back to the guitar pick, and we're going to just find an edge and just gently pry up. So these little 6 or 4 posts here, 1, 2, 3, and 4 in white, they're kind of putting some pressure on the circuit board, which makes it a little hard to pop off. Just being gentle here. There we go. I think we got the bottom off. Okay, it's just this last part here on the top left corner that's getting a little bit hard to come off. Okay, there we go. So just be gentle. You don't want to twist too much. So that's how the circuit board looks. Right now, this is the 12 o'clock position of the watch. That's the 6. So you just have to remember that orientation when putting the circuit board back. Now I'm going to lift this up carefully, flip it over. Okay. And just see if there's anything I need to be worried about there with the circuit board. Any loose parts like springs, nothing there. I'm going to set this part to the side. You'll notice that as I set my parts off to the side, I'm also putting it in a certain orientation where this is the 12 and that's the 6. So again, with the circuit board, that's the 12, that's the 6. Just makes reassembly a little bit easier. Okay, now with this part, we've got 4 more springs. Now, it's going to be very hard to pick this up on camera, but there's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and these are all gold colored. These are notoriously like to disappear on people when they're disassembling. Before we get to those 4, let's get these big 2 out of the way. Now these gold springs that I'm touching right now are different than the other 2 gold springs I removed earlier in terms of length, so we don't have to worry about confusing those. These 4 are also a different length. They're the smallest out of all the springs we'll be seeing in this video, so we also don't have to worry about confusing those with the other gold springs that we've touched. And these are all interchangeable. It doesn't matter if the top one goes to the bottom and vice versa. Okay, now when you touch these springs, they, just because of, static, they do like to stick or adhere to your instrument. So I barely touched one of these springs and you'll see that, see if I can pick that out on camera. You'll see that it already kind of jumped off on me. There's the spring right there. So that's one of them. So when I handle these, I don't even use tweezers. I like to just take a very thin tool, like this is my hobby knife, and I'm just like touching the edge of that, and you'll see that it grabs that spring. And let me see if I can show you what that spring looks like on camera. There's a little contrast there so you can see how it looks. There. So at the very tip of the blade there, it's gold colored. Okay, so we are going to carefully lift up on these springs, and then I like to put them with the rest of my hardware. So we'll put it right here and just carefully set that to the side. We'll do the same thing to the other 3 here. Just gently lift up. Spring is grabbed over there and set it down. The reason I don't use tweezers with this is if the head of your tweezer, because you're grabbing metal, if the head of your tweezer slips and squeezes on that smooth spring, it could fire the spring across the room and make it very difficult to locate. There's a 3rd spring. I know you can't see that clearly on camera. And for this last one, let's zoom in a lot here. There's the spring. Okay. All right, so got all my hardware here lined up, all my springs. Okay, things get a little bit easier now. We have several parts that make up the back of this display. You have this part here with these two black rectangular pieces. You'll notice that those two pieces face you when you have to reassemble this. So again, when I set that off to the side, I put it in the orientation that I removed it from the watch. Okay, we have two other pieces up here on the top. Or one on the top and one on the bottom. Okay, to access the other one, I'm going to remove this part right here. Now this part, when I lift up, there is an orientation to this that makes it easy to identify the right side because of these areas where the springs go. But to identify back from front, we're going to flip this over, and you'll notice that there's like a tiny L shape right here at the tip, and that the inner part of that L is actually facing down, right? So hopefully that makes sense when we have to reassemble the watch. So that's how I'm going to lay that part off to the side. Let's get that other tiny piece here, both the same size. Set those off. And now we have these parts over here. Now this part is a little bit tricky because it does affect the function of the watch. I'm just filming on a cell phone here, so I don't know how clear I can get this. But those four tiny springs that we removed were making contact with these contacts right here. Now there are 1, 2, 3, and 4 contacts, but they are grouped together. So these two contacts move as one piece, and these two contacts, as you can see there, this one has been move as one piece. Now the reason I'm mentioning this is you can see that that's kind of like a rectangle, right? The shape is like a rectangle. I'm going to hold a rectangle here, or kind of a rectangle on the left, just as an example. So when you remove these, you have to take note of the orientation, because the front of the rectangle is actually a slightly different color. It's more of a beige versus the back, which is more of a white. The white kind of points towards the center of the module. When you reinsert this back in, if it pops off and you have to reinsert it, if you were to insert the beige part facing the inside and the white part facing the outside, the watch would actually not function. So it does matter the orientation you put this in. So when I remove it this way, if I was to accidentally flip it the other way when reinserting it, it will affect the function of the watch. So let me just make sure that that's actually beige facing the outside. Yeah, I don't think that'll help you guys out. Well, maybe a little bit. This is a small magnifying glass. There we go. Can you see that? How the part facing the outside is a slightly darker color and the part facing the inside is lighter. So just remember that the lighter side faces the inside of the watch for both of these. Those of you with, are a little bit hard of sight, you might need to use your phone, because your phone can actually magnify pretty well and kind of zoom in when you have to reinsert those. So I'm going to remove these off. You don't have to, you can leave them in, but they're so small and easy to lose that I just like to keep track of everything. Okay, so that takes care of all the delicate parts there. Now with the rest of this, I believe we can just lift up. I'm going to flip this around. Yeah, okay, so nothing really to worry about there. Nothing else loose here. I'm going to set this to the side, flip this over, and now we have our display. And this is kind of where we stand with all the parts that we've removed so far from the watch. Okay, now a oversimplified but easy way to think about this display is that it's actually made up of layers, sandwiched and glued together. So right now you're seeing a top layer here. When we flip this over, it may still seem like one layer, but there's actually three layers. There's one layer here, one layer on the other side, and then a layer in the middle. So I'm going to use my fingers to kind of represent the three layers. So in this orientation of the display, you're kind of looking at my fingers like this. If I was to turn this display over to the side, that would be like this. And the top part that's facing us right now with all these graphics will be this finger here, and that is called the polarizing film. That's the part that you see on the watch. Now what we're going to be doing here is actually separating the polarizing film from the rest of the layers. We're then going to replace it with a new polarizing film, but turn that film 90 degrees to the right or to the left to get the positive effect. If this was a positive display and the customer wanted to go to negative, we would be doing the exact same process, lifting this part off and putting the new film on and orienting it 90 degrees to the left or to the right. Now, adhering this layer to this layer is a lot of glue over here, so it can be quite hard, difficult to separate that apart. So you need to use a little bit of chemical and mechanical advantage. For mechanical, we're going to be using a guitar pick. I'm going to basically wedge this in. To help dissolve that glue, I'm actually going to be dipping the guitar pick in a little bit of Goo Gone, which will help to break up the glue and make it easier to wedge my pick all the way through and separate that part off. Once this layer is off, we just toss this out. We don't need it anymore. There will still be a lot of glue underneath. You cannot simply put the new polarizing film on top. It will look messy when you reassemble the watch. So we've got to clean this glue off with a Q-tip and more Goo Gone. You want to really get this squeaky clean, and then you put on the new polarizing film. Now, some people ask, what if you just left all the layers together and we just slap a new polarizing film here on top of the old polarizing film and just change the orientation? You can't do that. Whether you're going from negative to positive or positive to negative, this has to be removed before you put on the new polarizing film. Okay, so a lot of words there. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Now, how do we find this middle layer where I can insert my guitar pick? Because it's easy to see with my fingers, but it's quite hard to see here on the actual thing. What you'll do is you'll take your guitar pick and just gently drag it across the top, and you'll listen for that guitar pick to jump down into that one layer. Okay, so let me show you what that sounds like. Okay, that little click sound is the guitar pick jumping from the top of the polarizing film down to that layer where we can wedge. So let's grab some Goo Gone here. I have it in a little bowl. I'm just going to dip the tip of my guitar pick in that, and then take a Q-tip with some Goo Gone and just lightly apply the Goo Gone to the perimeter of this display. And what that's helping to do is just, it's starting to loosen the glue that's just at the perimeter, and that will hopefully allow my guitar pick to start wedging itself in between the two layers. Okay, so we'll let that sit for a couple of minutes, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll come back in. Okay, so we now get our guitar pick again with some Goo Gone here. We're going to listen for that jump. It does not matter which side you start on. I like to start on corners personally. Okay, you can hear that skipping, and then I'm going to start running my guitar pick through. And then what you'll see is once you go through, there's a little bit of an air bubble there, which is great. And then the beauty of the guitar pick, it's kind of got like a cammed look, which makes it easy to rock back and forth and separate that polarizing film off. Keep the tip of the guitar pick well lubricated with Goo Gone, and just slowly work your way. Try to get this polarizing film off in one piece. Now you can also, if you don't have a guitar pick, you can use a credit card, like an old card or a club card might work. You might have to thin out the edge a bit because it's a little bit thicker than this. People have also used hobby knives, X-Acto knives to do this, which does work. I've used that in the past, but it is more of a safety issue because if you slip, you're going to cut yourself. So just choose to work what you're most comfortable with. Here's the polarizing film. Okay, I'm going to bring it back over the display. So I know it looks dirty, but there's that black negative display. Now, had Casio decided to change the orientation of this film 90 degrees to the left, you'll see that the display would have been positive. Let's go back to negative. 90 degrees to the right would have been positive. And then you can already assume 180 degrees would make it negative, right? So going from positive to negative, negative to positive, all it has to do with is the orientation of this film. Now, another question people ask is, whoa, why don't you just use the film you just removed? Go ahead and clean it up. If you decide to clean this up, because there is a lot of glue here, this is such a fragile film that you will start to scratch and put swirl marks in it. So when you reinsert it, it won't look good. Secondly, you can see that this film is asymmetric, right? It's shorter this way than it is this way. So if I was to turn this 90 degrees to the left or right and put it back, you won't have full coverage. We have exposed edges here and here. Now, even if this was symmetric and you could do it, you still have that issue. The film is very fragile. You don't want to spend and waste time trying to clean that up. So this one we can toss to the side. And here is our middle layer now. So this layer has been removed. We're now dealing with this layer over here. And you can see that there is a lot of glue here. So to deal with that glue, you're going to take a Q-tip, soak it in a lot of Goo Gone, and we're just going to dab all of that stuff over the entire display. Okay. And then I'm going to let that sit. The longer you let it sit, the easier it's going to be to remove the glue. So probably 5 to 10 minutes. So I'll check back. Okay, it's been 10 minutes. We're going to start removing this glue now. Okay, taking a Q-tip again with Goo Gone there. And now we'll start to do small circular motions here. Now, as I'm rubbing here, you'll notice that you can't really hear anything. But once you get the glue off and you're down to the clean, bare display underneath, you'll hear actually a squeaky sound. So that squeaky sound kind of tells you you're getting towards the end of removing the glue. So after I've done a few swirls there, I'm going to take my microfiber cloth here and just wipe away from the center to the outside. Okay, now I am putting light but firm pressure, and I'm working on a flat surface so that way I'm not bending, or I'm limiting how much I'm bending this display. So kind of go in a circular motion here. Get as much glue off as you can, and then just repeat again. We don't have to wait another 10 minutes here. We can just soak this whole thing and then do this again. Excuse me. Now at some point, the soft cotton tip of your Q-tip is going to be worn down. You're going to start getting to the root, especially because you're working with a liquid, the Goo Gone. So you don't want to be grinding the root into this and scratching it. So maybe after, excuse me, a couple of passes here, you're going to want to switch to the opposite side of the Q-tip. There we go. You can hear that squeaky sound. Using the opposite side now of the Q-tip. Pay particular attention to the sides. If you rotate your display under your light, it might be easy, see right there, to pick up the clumps of glue that you can focus on. Okay, go ahead and get it dry and rotate it in the light. Look for any clumps of glue. So right now it looks pretty clean, but if I rotate it just enough, you see right over there, got a little clump of glue there. Again, the edges really are harder to clean than the center. If I rotate it again, let me see if I can pick this up on camera. There, got two clumps right there and another clump right there. So it helps to have good lighting while you're doing this. Okay, still got a little bit here. So these three areas here, here, and here seem to be particularly stubborn. Sometimes the application of the glue from the factory is uneven. You know, it'll be easier in some places and harder. I've even worked with same model G-Shocks where the glue came off within, a couple of minutes. Very, very easy. And the exact same model, same color of G-Shock, and the glue took me maybe 20 minutes of doing what I've been doing here. So it really just kind of depends on what's happening. It really just depends on what kind of watch that you're going to be getting, but just be patient with it. You don't want to rush this because if any glue remains, it's not going to look good when you reassemble. So rather than continuing to, rub my Q-tip into there just to save myself more work and, friction here on the display, I'm just going to apply a generous amount of Goo Gone again and let this sit for another 10 minutes. Let it do its thing. Check back with you guys. Okay, let's try to get the last part of this glue off here. Okay, let's rotate this in the light. Okay, so we've removed a little bit, but still a little bit of glue there. Still a little bit there on the top right. And this one over here, I think we got all of that. So this is going to take a little bit more time just to save time on the camera. I'm going to pause the video here, clean this all off using the exact same method I've been doing, and just get this nice and clean. Okay, so that took another 15 minutes. This one started off easy, but ended up being a little bit more stubborn with the glue. But now we've got all of it removed here. Nice, clean, squeaky display. I'm rotating my towel here to a clean part. We're just going to dry off all that goo gone. I'm touching the edges here, not the front of the display. Let's get it nice and dry, and then clean the sides as well. And then also the back. Okay, let's transfer this to a clean microfiber cloth here. And then I'm gonna wash my hands just because it got goo gone on it. Okay, so now that we have our display clean, we can set this off to the side, and now we can focus on the new polarizing film. I have a little bit of goo gone that went through the towel there, so let me just clean up that area really quick. You can just kind of remove that with microfiber cloth and some alcohol. Okay, now there are a couple of ways you can put the new polarizing film on. So let me get these two parts in shot here. Okay, one way, well, there's also two types of polarizing film that you can use. You can use adhesive polarizing film. It's basically like a sticker. You have one side that's not sticky, another side that's sticky, and you can lay that sticky part directly onto the display. The second way is to take a polarizing film that is not sticky. It has two protective layers, and the middle layer itself gets applied, but it does not stick to anything, so you have to use something like glue tape to stick it down to the watch. And I prefer to use the latter. I like to go with non-adhesive. The reason being, when you use adhesive, if your technique isn't perfect, what you're going to end up having is air bubbles develop underneath when you apply that film. You can't rip that film off and then cover it again, rip it off and cover it again to remove the air bubble, because the film is quite fragile and it will crack when you do that. So you really have to get it done, apply it, and do it right the first time. If you have an air bubble, you can try to squeeze them out, but if that air bubble is in the center, you're going to just have to remove that whole film, clean the display again with Goo Gone because there's some adhesive on the back of that film, and then try another film again. It just takes too long in my experience to do that, and the result compared to non-adhesive polarizing film is exactly the same. So what I do is, rather than apply it to the display, I take a little bit of glue tape and I apply a thin strip up here and another thin strip down there. I adhere the polarizing film to the inside. This part is called the masking. And then I reassemble the watch. Now, even though the polarizing film isn't touching directly onto the display when you reassemble the watch, when everything is all put back together, it looks exactly the same. It's still very crisp, very vivid. It just makes it so much easier because there's no risk of air bubbles. So that's just my take. Some people prefer to do it the other way. You'll just have to kind of maybe try both ways and see what works best for you. So when using non-adhesive polarizing film, some people say, well, why don't you just go ahead and apply it directly here to the display? What happens is if you cut out your polarizing film exactly this shape, there's no room to put glue tape to adhere the film to the display. You can't put the new film in loosely. It's going to shake around. You could put glue tape here on the edges and then put your new polarizing film on top, but if you do that, then you're going to see the glue tape underneath, right? So that's the reason why I adhere it to the masking. So the cutout for our polarizing film is going to be a little bit larger than the display. It's going to be about this size. And so what we'll do is get our film here, and I'll show you how to measure that. Okay, here's the polarizing film. Comes in a big sheet. Okay, this is linear polarizing film, size A4. I believe this is shorter now. It used to be up to here. It's about the sheet of the size of printer paper. Now with polarizing film, again, this is non-adhesive. So we have a protective layer on this side, a protective layer on this side, and in the middle is the actual film. So you don't have to worry about touching this with your fingers and putting fingerprints on it. Okay. Now, the question is, how do I know what orientation to put this in? Firstly, is it this way? Is it this way? Is it this way? And which side do I use? Because that does matter. So to identify the correct side, you're going to take your display here. Okay, just choose any side to work with and we'll start rotating it. If you're getting only two colors, black and white or gray, see how it's just black or white, black and white, then you're on the correct side. Let's flip this over and let me show you what happens if we were on the incorrect side. Okay, you see here how I'm getting kind of a gradient. There's some blue, some orange, some yellow in there, some purples. Those look really cool, but that is the wrong side of the film to be on. So we need to flip this over and be on this side. Now, we've got the correct side. What orientation? Well, we've talked about this before. You're only dealing with 90 degrees, right? So you're either this way for positive, this way for negative. If you go in between that at like 45, you're going to be halfway between positive and negative, which people don't usually like because it's unclear and harder to read. Rotate another 90, we're going positive. So again, this customer wants positive. If you want negative, you'll just do the opposite orientation. So we'll turn this around. I know that I'm going to be on this side, and I know that these two right angles need to be facing here to be in the right orientation. Now we're going to move this display off to the side. We're going to take our case here. Okay, now I need to trace the inside of that masking to get the right shape. Okay, now remember that when we are reassembling, everything is in reverse because we're taking our parts and flipping them over, right? So I need to take my film right now and just flip this over. I know we have the wrong side facing us, but when we reassemble, the correct side is going to be facing the glass, right? So hope that makes sense to you. Got my corners here, 90 degrees to keep myself in the correct orientation so that I don't do it at the incorrect angle. I'm going to take a fine tip Sharpie here. Put this over and just trace the inside of that. I've had some people say, well, why don't you just go ahead and remove the masking and trace that outside of the case? It'll be so much easier. Now that is a good question because some of these maskings do remove very easily and some of them don't. You have to deal with a bunch of clips on the pushers, which makes it just more time consuming. So you can test this out by taking some tweezers and just lifting up on the masking. And in this case, this masking comes off nice and easy, like so. Okay. If yours is attached by clips, you can go through the process. They'll have C-clips. Those can be really a long process to remove and quite easy to lose. So if your masking doesn't come off as easy as this, just take the film, go over it, and just roughly get the correct shape, cut it out, trim it as need be till it fits nice and flush. So we'll take this off, set this off to the side. This is the masking here. I'm going to take my film and let's trace the shape we need. Okay, I've got my two edges here lined up. So I'm on the right side. I like to write some letters to let me know whether I'm on the back or the front side of this film, because again, it does matter. So I'm just going to put B for back. This, again, is a protective layer that we're writing on, so we don't have to worry about this marking up the actual film that will be installed. This is going to get peeled off and thrown away. And then I can now trace the shape I need. Yeah, that looks clear on camera. Now you'll see here, I kind of went around and around, even though the plastic extends there. I don't know if that's coming off on camera. Okay, the reason is you can see there are two holes here. Can you see that? Two holes. And there are two large springs that have to go through those holes. So I need to allow them passageway through the film. So I'm drawing around those cutouts. If you're using a different GShock for this mod and you have more cutouts, they're often here at the bottom, the 6 o'clock, do the same thing, go around them. Okay, so it's just a rough shape. I might need to trim this a little bit more. Let's go ahead and cut this out. Okay, there is our rough shape. Okay, again, this is why I write the letter B. It tells me that I should be on this side with the B facing me when I'm reinserting the watch. Clean up our work area a bit. Okay, let's go ahead and test fit this into the watch. So we'll take our masking. I have a little duster here. Anytime I remove and reinsert stuff into the watch, I like to just dust as much of the dust away, or blow as much of the dust away as possible. Okay, insert that masking, and let's put the film in and see how that looks. Okay, so I think this looks pretty good. Now, to get a good fit, what you want to do is check your edges. So here is the opening of the masking. That's the visible area that you see when you wear the watch. You see that visible area? The visible area should be shorter than the actual film. You don't want to cut your film the exact size of the visible area, because what happens is This is a different watch, not digital. But if you turn your watch to the side, you can see the polarizing film just underneath the masking if the polarizing film is cut to the exact size of those openings. So by overlapping my film larger than the openings, when you turn your watch to the side, you won't see those layers. It's a minor thing, but it's just a small detail that you want to be aware of. So we've got good coverage here. Secondly, I'm checking, do I have enough space here on the top between the opening and the edge of the polarizing film to apply a little strip of glue tape? And yes, I do. Okay, that looks good. The opening is shorter than the edge of the polarizing film. You see that? Got a nice long edge here where I can apply some glue tape. Good coverage here, spring here later on, and yep, we have good openings here. Maybe I can trim this just a little bit here to make that opening for the spring a little bit easier, and good coverage here. So let's trim this small section. Try this one more time. There we go. Now we've got a better opening for the spring over there. Okay, so we can set this film off to the side. Be a little bit delicate with this. It's pretty firm, but if you bend it too much, you will put a crease in it. Okay, and let's apply our glue tape here to the top and to the bottom. Now the type of glue tape I'm using is this brand. This is called T-Rex super glue tape. I will put a link in my description that shows you how to apply and cut this glue tape. You can see that this is quite wide for what we need, so you can just cut off little strips. When you peel this off, you have a white protective backing on one side. The glue tape itself is actually clear, and then the other side is sticky. So I'm not going to show you how to cut this to size. You can watch the link below if you want to know how to do that. Okay, here is a thin strip of glue tape going in on the top. Now you'll notice I didn't put the glue tape all the way to the edge here where the opening is. Again, if I had done that and we wear our watch and turn it to the side, you're going to be able to see that, that tape. You don't want to see that. So I'm going to push it just maybe like a millimeter away from the start of the opening. Okay, go ahead and tap that down, and let's do the other side. When you're applying your tape, in case you missed it earlier, make sure you're not covering up any additional holes that might be underneath. Okay, and I think 2 sides is plenty. Oh, I think I filled up the 2 sides pretty well. Let's get some glue tape here on the left side now. And then one more just underneath that ribbon. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now what we'll do is remove the white backing of that tape. Might need a tool to hold down the masking while you're lifting up. Okay, now let's go ahead and just take like a toothpick and readjust our tape if need be. In this case, the tape on this side, might be hard to see, is getting a little bit close to that hole for the spring, so I'm just going to gently, let me hold down the masking with one tool and just reposition it. The tape, to some extent, can be spread like maybe a millimeter or two, so adjust it as you need. Okay, that looks good. The top looks good. I don't think I need to do anything there. This one here, it's getting a little bit too close to the opening. The tape might be visible, so I'm going to push that tape just a little bit back. Spread it a little bit to the sides here underneath that ribbon. And then the bottom here looks good. Okay. All right, with the tape inserted, we're getting ready to now install our film. So here's our film again, right? So before we install that film, we want to get rid of any remaining dust that might be in this case. So one more time here, I'm going to gently lift up on the masking here. Be very careful to set that down on the right side so the glue does not touch the surface. Here's our case. There's nothing loose to worry about, so I can flip this upside down. And then I'm going to do this off camera, but I like to take my duster here and just kind of blow into that, so that way the gravity helps me out and removes as much of the visible dust particles as possible. You can see we've got one right over there. It helps to have a contrast surface to be working on, like blue or black, because it really highlights that dust. So let's try to get that off. Okay, that looks good. Now, I have some other areas here that look like smudges. I know that those are on the outside of the glass because I have not touched the inside. But just to make sure, sometimes a customer sends me a watch that they've worked on and they might have left fingerprints. Also, on my own watches, I've sometimes accidentally left fingerprints on the inside of the glass. So before reassembling everything, let's clean those smudges off, just to make sure that those are truly on the outside. There is a smudge or a small scratch that was already here when the customer shipped me the watch. So that part won't come off, but I'm just going to clean the rest of this glass to see if I've gotten everything on the inside. You can use our duster again for the outside of the glass. And let's check. Okay, one more bit right over there. I think that's on the inside. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So turn this over, take our masking. I'm going to dust this side off away from my work area. Make sure you put that in the correct orientation. Take my film, that goes in next. Now, remember we have a protective layer on the back and the front. I need to remove the protective layer on the front first. So let me show you what that looks like. You can take a thin, small tweezer and just kind of work at it here. There we go. I think I got this edge here. There we go. There's that protective layer. Remove that and use some tweezers here to insert this in. I think if I do it this way, it'll make it easier to get it underneath that ribbon. Now, another way to do this is you could have taken the masking out and just adhere it that way. I like to adhere it with everything installed as much as possible. So let me just loosely drop that in there. I'm not pushing down yet. I want to check here for my openings for the springs. Oh, whole thing jumped out. The glue caught the, well, I guess we can just install it this way now. Doesn't really matter, I guess. Actually, this is better. I should have just done this to begin with. Take the masking out if you can and install the film on this way. It's making it more difficult than I needed to earlier. There we go. Okay, now let's again dust the inside of this. Check for any dust. And off camera, we're also going to do the same here. Okay, insert the masking. There we go. There we go. There's a couple of little tabs here on the outside or surrounding the case back that can make it a little tough to put that in. So get that in flush. That looks good. Okay. Then we can we'll remove the protective backing on this polarizing film later. Let's cover this up, and let's now go into reassembling the rest of our display. Just kind of clean up my area really quick. Okay, so for reassembly, we're going to start with this part first. The orientation you're going to want to get this in if you flip this over, you're going to see it's mostly white. If you flip it over to this side, we have some dark contacts here. So you want the dark contacts facing you, and you want those contacts on the right side. Then we're going to, let me try to remember here, insert our display next. Here it is, without the polarizing film. Okay, now you want that little analog clock in the corner there to be facing the top. We're going to flip that over and insert this in. Okay, push it down flush. Now the next part are going to be those two little contacts. Remember, they come attached in pairs. So let's get those next. There we go. Okay, now when inserting these, again, it does matter the orientation. So if we flip this over, you'll see it's really white. The camera's not picking it up. Let me put it in my hand here. Sorry for the brightness. Where is it? There we go. So one side there is white, and if we flip that over, you have those two silver contacts, right? And then this is the side that should be facing you. The white side should be facing down. Okay, and then we have a beige side there where my tweezers are pointing, and a white side. The beige part will be facing out. The white side will be facing in when we reinsert this. So let's put this one in first. Okay, that part's in. You want to be very gentle when you're rotating this larger part, because it can cause this small contact to jump very easily. There we go. Now, if you reassemble the watch and you find your display not working, I would come back to this step of the video because this is a very common culprit. Putting these in the wrong orientation could be the reason why your display is not working. Okay, now we'll take this part. Okay, we're going to orient it with the 4 holes on the right, and remember there's that little L shape. That's the orientation it should be in. Now, to insert this, I'm going to rotate this display so the contacts are on the left, and then do the same thing here. The reason is it just makes it a little bit easier. Oh, actually, no, incorrect. I had it right the first time. This way, and then this way. I like to lay down this side of this part first and then slowly guide this part down onto the contacts. If you just drop this down, sometimes what happens is it causes those contacts to come out of their little housing, and then you have to reset those again. So we're going to put the left side down first. Let me just double check these. Oh yeah, it's a little bit off on this. I got to reposition this one again. So this part takes a long time. Some of you might get it on your first pass. Oh, this can be a little bit tricky. There we go. Okay. Appreciate your guys' patience if you're still watching. Okay, now let's lay the left side of the glass down first. And then I'm using a toothpick here to guide the right side slowly down onto those contacts. Okay, once that's in place, you can let go. And we have a thin slot up here and another part down here. That's where you're going to insert these two. These are interchangeable and they're both the same length. So you're going to put the thin side going down and insert that in. And then just lightly tap that down. Keep pressure on the back of this clear part with one finger so that way it doesn't jump up, because right now that clear part is holding those two contacts down nice and secure. And repeat the same thing for the bottom here. Okay, If your display doesn't work when you reassemble, a second thing that you can check beyond those contacts are these two strips. Either you forgot to put them in or they're not being pushed down far enough. There you go. Okay. Then we will take our this part here. Okay, let's dial down the brightness here a little bit. Sorry for all the glare. Okay, you want those two black parts facing you. We're going to carefully lift up our finger from there and then set this part down. Okay, and apply pressure again. Now you have those 4 springs over here that we need to put in. Those are really tiny. I like to take a small blade and I just touch the spring. Again, you can use tweezers if you want, but there's a higher probability of it firing that spring across the room. So there's that spring. And what I'm doing is I'm just gently guiding it into its hole, one of those 4 over there on the right, and then I'll use a toothpick to tap it down. There's one. I don't know if that's coming off on camera. I know that's not very clear resolution, but hopefully zooming in will allow you to see the spring a little bit more. There's the spring on the tip. Oops. Somehow the spring from the top jumped to the hole underneath it, so now I'm going to put this one on the top. There we go. 2 more. There we go. And last one. There we go. Phew. Okay. Now it'll be even more delicate touching this because very slight jumps in this part will pop those springs off. Okay, now we've got 2 big springs here on the side, or I should say long springs. 1 and 2. Now with these springs, there is a way and orientation to put these in, unlike the last 4. So You can see here on one end it's thin, on this side it's thick. The thin end goes in first, and we're going into that hole and into that hole. These are much easier to work with, so you can use tweezers here. Okay, great. Now we're going to put our circuit board on. Now the circuit board has these two parts facing down, and you have that little copper part, that spool there facing you. Now the way to get the right orientation left to right is you see the contact here, circle, and here. Those two will line up with these two big springs, so that's why we take this, we line those up, and then we're going to turn the board over. And actually you can see here 1, 2, 3, and 4, those contacts line up with the 4 springs here on the side. Now when you push this down, you're going to want to maintain pressure with one finger. Again, you want to avoid touching that copper coil, so probably touch right over here. These two larger springs on the side are going to be a little bit harder to push down because they're actually going through the entire plastic white housing and pushing onto the surface. So you're just going to have to maintain pressure while gently lifting up on the entire thing. So we'll push. I like to put the this side down first just to touch those springs. Okay, I'm keeping pressure with this little rubberized tool, and then I'm going to push on those 4 posts. Remember the posts that were a little bit hard to pop the circuit board out, so just gently put some pressure there, and it should click into place. Keeping pressure now with my finger. You heard that click there. Okay, so I heard the click. Now you can check these little posts. There's one here, another post here, one there, and then the last one is right there. So those should be popping up and securing in those little half moon cutouts of the circuit board. Once that's in place, you can gently let go with your finger because it's kind of held now in one place. And then we need to attach this part. This part has the little clips on the outside, on the perimeter, that are going to grab and secure the rest of this. So still be pretty delicate with moving this part on the left if you have to. Now with this part, remember we had 3 springs to deal with. Let's get those guys out right now. 2 same length gold colored springs, and 1 similarly length but silver spring there on the top. Let's move my work area here. So gold, gold, and silver. Okay. Now remember that the silver went right over here and the 2 golds went over here. Now what I've done in the past is I've gone ahead and inserted these springs in. So you insert your 3 springs, and then what you have to do is you take these 2 parts here and you have to leave this flush on the surface. You can't move this because even though the circuit board is held in place, it's not being secured in place by the clips. So if I was to turn this part on the left on its side, those 4 tiny springs and possibly the 2 large springs here would easily pop off. So I need to leave this where it is. So if I put these 3 springs here and then I take this part and I flip it over onto the board, the problem is now these 3 springs are going to fall out. So I have springs falling out on both sides if I flip them over. So what do I do? So what I like to do is, first of all, just make sure you're on this side where you have that little piece of the battery showing right there and this little contact. And I'm just going to flip this guy over and find where the openings for these 3 holes are. So 1, 2, and 3. I want to find them on the other side. And sure enough, they're very easy to spot. 1, 2, and 3. All right. So I'm just going to take this part, ignore my springs, and just bring this back over and carefully put this on top. Make sure it's lined up before you push down. Okay, let me see if I can get my camera here at a better angle for you to see how to know it's lined up properly. Where's the circuit board? There you go. So you'll notice that, is it clear? Let's see if I can find a better angle. There we go. Focus right here. This is the silver clip that's part of this top black part. And then there's that little white tab on the bottom that's part of the white bottom part. We need that little white tab to go through that little hole right there for the top part. So you need to make sure that, excuse me, you need to make sure that this top part is lined up just above that little white tab for that part, that part, that part, and all the other clips around the watch. So since this is lined up, you can see all 3 of these are lined up, and I've checked the others that are lined up. What you can do then at that point is start pushing down and securing the 2 halves together. Let's go back to the top view here. So once you've got those lined up, what you'll do is you'll push on the corners where those little clips are. So here, you don't want to push in the center. You want to push on the sides because that's where that silver cage is, right? And then you'll hear some clicks when you do that. Okay, maintain pressure, and now let's go ahead and check visually around the side to make sure all those clips secured. Check the top. Because again, you don't want to flip this over until everything is clipped because those 4 tiny springs are going to fall on the side. So now let me show you the view again with everything properly inserted. Okay, you'll see here. See how the little white tab went through the holes and then it went through that hole. Check all of those. Sorry for all the movement here on the camera. Just trying to get you guys better view. Okay, so just rotate this, verify that the top is clipped in. Yep, that looks good. Okay, everything is clipped in. So now that that's all clipped in, you can move this around. You can take a breath, right? Everything looks good. We still have our 2 large springs here popping out through the side. Okay. Now let's focus on these springs here. Okay, and what are we going to do with those? First of all, let's go with the gold ones. So let's put that silver one aside. These are the 2 gold ones. They're exactly the same. And let me show you what these look like up close. Okay, I'm going to go for a bright view here because I want you guys to see. You see right there, let me see if I can catch it in the light. On this side, there's like a little tail. It's going perpendicular to the length of the spring. See, there's that tail right there. It's very small. So that tail is on this side, but there's none on this side, right? So the part that has that perpendicular tail is the part that gets inserted first into the hole. So let's now go to our watch here. We have 1 gold spring that will go here and another gold spring that will go here. The reason the tail part goes in first is that little perpendicular part catches on the inside of this plastic housing. So that way, if the module's flipped the other way, the spring doesn't fall apart. That little tail prevents it from falling down. So you need to take a pair of tweezers that have some teeth on it, and then you're going to grab the spring by the non-tail end. So I'm grabbing it from this side. Okay. Oops. Let me do that again. Okay, you see that? I'm grabbing it by the non-tail end. It's a little bit easier to see that perpendicular part. You want tweezers with teeth because you're going to have to put a little bit of gentle but firm force down on the spring to get it to push through that hole, because it won't go in smoothly because that tail is preventing it from doing that. Now, you'll just go ahead and gently insert that in, and you should hear it kind of click into place. And then once it clicks into place, you can let go. There's one spring there. And then take another tool, something that's not metal. So I have a little silicone tip here on this one. I'm just going to gently push down on that spring again, just to make sure it's in place. And then I'll take the same tweezer and gently pull up on the spring just to make sure that it's not going to come out. If it comes out easily when I pull up, that means I didn't fully insert that spring. We need that spring to be inserted because it makes contact between this part of the watch and the back of the watch, which has some parts on the inside of that case. See, these contacts here need to make contact with those parts of the watch. So let's gently lift up on that spring. And sure enough, I'm gently tugging. It's not pulling out. Okay, so I'm going to tap it down just a little bit, and let's go to the next spring. You're going to go right to that hole right there. There's the first spring. The second one should go here. Okay, now we're going to go to our silver spring, and let's take a look at that one. Okay, you can see that this one also has a little perpendicular tail on that. So same exact thing. This time we're going to go to this hole right here. So look for your landmarks and then look for that hole. It's right to the left of the battery tab clip if your watch is in this orientation. Very good. Okay, you can breathe. Just cleaning up my work area really quick. Okay, so that's all inserted. Let's get these two parts next to each other because now it's time to reassemble the watch. Okay, now for orientation's sake, just make sure that your case is in this orientation. You see I have the word GShock right there at the top. Note the orientation of your case back. You want it to match the orientation of the front. Remove that part. Okay, now we have our protective film here for the polarizing film. Let's go ahead and gently peel that off. Hold it down with one tool and just gently use some tweezers to catch an edge there of the film. There you go. There's that protective film removed. There's our clean new polarizing film below. Now, before you insert the module, you want to check the stem. The stem is the thin part of the pusher. Pusher is also called a button. So here's your button. It has a skinny end, kind of like a letter T. That's the top of the T. That's the long bottom part of the T. The stem goes in and interacts with the module by pushing in on these tabs. You see that tab there, a tab there, and two more on the other side. So on some watches, the stem will not push back automatically. It might be pushed in like this. You see that stem pushing in. If it's in like that, if you're working with a different GShock, or if your spring is broken on the stem, you need to push that stem back into the outside position so that way the module can sit properly on the inside. So you just lightly push on those stems to make sure they're in place. And we're going to take our module. Note that the analog cutout is here on the top right. Let's go ahead and gently dust this off camera. And also this one. Okay. Then we're going to take this and we're going to flip this over. So obviously that circle there should go to that circle over there. So take this and we're going to turn it over. Now before you do that, check these little clips here. I just noticed this. You see these little clips? You can bend these upright for now. That's okay, because it will make it so much easier to insert the module. We just need to remember to bend these clips back down. The little ribbon here might get caught, so just have a small toothpick handy to gently lift that out of place as you're reinserting. And remember, our two springs here should go into those two holes over there. So take our module, insert that in, take that ribbon, guide it out of place, out of the way, and let's insert this slowly. Now those little tabs that we were pushing out, you might have to push those out again. Okay, lightly push down. Okay, now you don't want to push down too hard, because what ends up happening is, remember these little clips here on the module? Let me zoom into one here. Okay, we're talking about this part. There's that little clip here, and I said that the stem of the pusher touches that to interact with the watch. What ends up happening sometimes is, if this is the stem with my toothpick, as that clip comes down, which will be my left finger here, it rests on top of the stem like that. The tab does. So what we need to do is bring that tab like this, so that way the stem can push it properly. So you might need to take a thin tool and just lightly pull back on that little clip or that tab, and then push down with your other finger to push the module down in. And that will allow the module to sit flush. And then repeat for the other three. Like so. Okay. Then you can just put some light pressure here on the battery. Again, avoid touching that copper part. Gently push your buttons, you see, and you want to check that that tab is being pushed by the stem. So that one looks good. That looks good. That looks good. Okay. You have one more here that has its own kind of unique way of interacting with the module, but you just want to push that to make sure that that's working also. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Then what we'll do is do a reset or an all clear. So an all clear is what you would usually do when you remove the battery or you change your battery. It will apply here as well because technically we did remove the battery from the display. So where's the all clear and how do I find it? So tools you're going to need for this job is just very simple. A little paper clip here bent in the shape of a U. We have one end longer than the other side. Okay, and then you want to look for a all clear hole. And you can see here AC with an arrow pointing to here. Okay, so what's going to happen is the longer end of your paper clip will go into the AC hole. The shorter end will touch anywhere that's silver over here. Casio likes to tell you can just touch it to this negative part here indicated by the symbol. I will go ahead and do that, but on my own watches I found it really doesn't matter where the short end of that paper clip goes so long as it's touching any of these silver parts. Again, avoid touching that copper part in the center. Okay, so take your clip, AC, and the negative post or negative contact area, and then hold there for like 10 seconds. Sometimes just a few seconds, but I'm just going to hold for a few more. Okay, and that should have done an all clear. All right. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, before we do that, we should have attached this little ribbon here and then do the all clear. Now, this little ribbon here can be quite difficult to get back in. So again, I'm just using plastic tweezers here. I'm just gently guiding it, and then it needs to go into that little slot there. Okay, so I like to start with the ribbon just kind of on top of the housing like that, and then I'll just gently push it back, okay, with a toothpick, and then guide it slowly into that little slot. And then what will happen is that little bend in the ribbon there will kind of push the head of that ribbon automatically in, and if you've guided it in properly, it should slide into that little part. And then you can just gently take your toothpick and touch the top of that ribbon that's bulging to kind of guide it into the area. There you go. And then just slowly insert that. Now, you'll notice here that the very front part of the ribbon, you see the back part is orange and the front part is gold. You should see a very small amount of that gold, but right now a lot of it is exposed, which tells me I have to push this even further in. Okay, take my plastic tweezers. Maybe I can just push here from behind. Kind of wiggle it back and forth to get it in. You can still see a bit of that gold tip there, so we need to push this in further. There we go. I don't know if that showed up on camera, but You can see it's a lot thinner now, that gold tip. Okay. Okay, so that looks good. There you go. And of course, when we reassemble the watch and we test the functions of the ABC, if we don't get any response, then we know that that ribbon was not connected in properly. Okay, so now with that gold ribbon in, let's do an all clear again. Holding here. Okay, let's now take this part over here. Okay, you'll notice there's a little cutout there for the two gold springs there. And then we have another little tab that comes through over here. And at this point, those little silver tabs all around the side that we, opened up a little bit to allow us to push in the module, we need to close those back. And they'll wrap right over this gray part. There we go. Then we'll take our O-ring. Now, I'm going to re-lubricate this O-ring with silicone oil for the customer, but again, I want to test the functions to make sure everything is all set to go before I firmly secure everything back. So I'm just going to put this on for now. There we go. Take our housing here. Now remember the orientation. This is the 12. This is the 6 of the watch. This is the orientation your case back needs to be in, of course, because it needs to make contact with these springs over here. You can see the range man is in that orientation. And what we'll do is we'll just push this in and hold with one finger, but not putting in the screws in the back yet, because now we're going to check the functions. It's easier to check now, because if there's any mistakes or I see any dust underneath the display and I need to disassemble the watch, I don't have to waste time removing the screws. I can check all those things right now. So maintain pressure with one finger, keep that pressure on the back, and then rotate the watch. Now, if this is a solar watch, it might take a few seconds for it to come on, or you might need to shine a very bright flashlight to get everything going again. So actually, let me grab my flashlight really quick. Okay, got my O-light here. Let's put this on max brightness. Oh, actually, we have a little bit of the display coming on, so that's a good sign. But what you really want to do, and actually on the tab that covers the battery, there are instructions how to do an all clear. It does say to shine a bright light on this or put this in direct sunlight up to a few seconds. So, oops. Let's go ahead and shine that. There we go. And there is our watch with a positive display. Very cool. Instantly, I am getting Stormtrooper vibes right now. Okay, so before I reattach everything here and lubricate that O-ring, one thing I want to mention is I have had cases where I've had a weaker light than this, and I thought it was bright enough. And I flipped this watch over doing the same mod, and nothing came on. And then I went all the way back and disassembled the watch and, checked those springs, put it back together, same problem. Display never came on. Then what I did was I said, well, you know what? Everything looks fine. Let me take this out into direct sunlight, and boom, display instantly came on. Or I now have a much brighter flashlight. The display instantly comes on. So when you reassemble, if your display is not showing, before you go through the process of disassembly, take this out into direct sunlight or get a really, really bright flashlight and shine it there for a few seconds. Eliminate that possibility before having to give yourself more work. Okay, so this looks really good. Okay, now, again, I'm holding the case back because we don't have the screws on yet, so I'm just maintaining pressure there. Let's check all the buttons. We have one button here, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'd like to start here on the top left. So the day of the week is disappearing, so that tells me that function is working, or that pusher is working. Bottom left. Okay, that's working. Can you also hear the sound? Okay, that sound also tells me that one of the springs that we connected is making good contact with the case back, because that's where your speaker for the watch is. Also, that's where your alarm sound comes from. Let's go into a stopwatch mode so we can test the other buttons here. Let's see what this bottom right button does. I'm going to skip this middle one for now. There we go, that's working. And the top right. There we go. So this one and this one are working. Let's do this one for the ABC functions. Altimeter, compass, barometer. Altimeter again. So that button's working. Now let's do the light, which is this button over here. Let's turn off and get the room as dark as possible. And there's our backlight. PS, by the way, means power saving. That's, I think, a default setting that the watch goes to. It can be removed. Okay, and all the functions look good. So everything looks great on this watch, even after the mod. No functions were lost. Okay, now for my customers also, what I like to do, I'm not going to show it into this video because I need to ask the customer first, is I like to ask them when I reassemble the watch, number one, how do you like your clock? Do you want it in 12-hour or 24-hour military format? That's such a minor thing to adjust, but I would like the customer to get the watch back in the way they sent it to me. And I just always ask that of them. Secondly is the auto light. So this watch, I believe, has an auto light where when you wear the watch down and then you flick it suddenly, which would simulate you turning your wrist to check the time, that triggers the light, the backlight of the watch to automatically come on. So I'm going to ask the customer that too. Do you want auto light turned on or off? And then, of course, I will set the day and date to the person's location, not to mine, of course. And then I will go into any stopwatch functions or timers. Sometimes the customer had like a certain countdown timer that they use this watch for, and I will try to put those back. So all those little things add up together, so that way when the customer gets the watch, it's ready to wear. Okay. Okay, so we are all set. So let's leave that on. Let's go ahead and remove the case back now. So just as proof to show you, that's where your speaker comes from. When I push the button, flip this over. No sound, right? So that's just to let you know that the speaker is on the case back over there. All right, let's go ahead and re-lubricate this O-ring. Now, how do you know if you need to re-lubricate? In this case, I don't think the customer needs it, but I just do it again. It's peace of mind. If you take your O-ring and you put it underneath the rec light and you rotate it, if there's a nice little glisten there, that means it's well lubricated. If it's really a dull reflection of light, then you need to put some oil. Now, the type of oil that you want to use is always 100% silicone oil, just because silicone oil does not eat away at rubber parts. So you can buy it off Amazon. Just get the cheapest silicone oil you can get. Don't worry about the viscosity rating. That has to do with just the viscosity of the oil. That doesn't really matter when it comes to lubrication. So just get the cheapest you can find, and you can see this one says silicone fluid right there. I'm going to take a little cloth here, take the O-ring, or I guess you can also call that a gasket. It's not really in an O shape. Take a clean Q-tip, and then you just want to roll the Q-tip over. Flip this over and over and do it again. You don't want to put oil on your fingers and then drag the gasket through, because you might stretch it. Okay, then we'll take the dry side of the Q-tip, and I'm just gonna dry off the excess here so we don't have it dripping when we put it back. Okay. Let's go back to our watch here. Make sure it's sitting flush and its little housing there. I'm going to push these clips down a little bit more on the side. Okay, take our case back. Again, 2 springs there at the bottom left. This is the orientation the case back should be. Don't rock this around to find the right position. Try to just drop it in properly the first time. It should line up with the white shroud here. And then once that lines up, go ahead and push with 1 finger. Let's take our case back screws. Those are the shorter of the 2 that you have left. I'm going to loosely tighten these. Maintaining pressure with that left finger. Okay, then what I'll do is I'll check right over here and right here at the top, make sure that that O-ring is not popping off. Okay, and then what you can do is just lightly peel back on this shroud, because this plastic piece is actually not attached to the black piece underneath. This is called the shroud. This black part underneath is called the case, and this is the case back. So the shroud can be lightly pulled, and then you can check to make sure that the O-ring is not being pinched by the case back, and then repeat for the other side. Okay, that looks good. And then now we can fully tighten. Okay, there we go. Let's test the functions one more time. Sound is back. Those 2 buttons work. Days disappearing. That looks good. And the back light. Okay. Then in this orientation, we're going to flip this over, turn it to the side. This is the 12 o'clock position. The 12 always pertains to the short end of the strap, so we're going to put that part in first. Okay, and then the long part goes to the 6. Okay, go to the sides here, insert the last set of screws you should have, the long ones. Now I like to push these screws through as far as they'll go before I screw them in, and that just helps to line up the strap. Okay, now we can go ahead and screw them in. I always try on a customer's watch, you'll notice I kind of guide the head of my bit into the grooves of the screw. I don't want to put my screwdriver in and move this around because it's going to scratch the screw. So I want to put it in there properly the first time. Okay, and that looks great. Then what I usually do, again, this is just for people who are potential customers, is once I'm done modding, I always send pictures before I mail it out. And I wait for your approval to say, hey, it looks good. Or, oh, you know what, I decided I wanted to add something else. I also run through the functions, so I will be doing this for the customer in a short 1 to 2 minute video. I'll go ahead and say, Austin, here's your watch. I'll give them a quick show of the watch, top to bottom, left to right. Okay. I like to do this at an angle for the customer because I want them to see that they cannot see the polarizing film that I inserted. That's why we made our film larger than the cutout for the window. Those little openings on the side, you don't want to see any of that film. And then I'll say, here are your functions again. So I'll run through all the functions of the watch as I already did for you guys, including the backlight, and then change the date, time, and any other settings that the customer is going to want. All right, so guys, that'll do it for today's video. This might be the longest video I think I have. So again, this is not a particularly different job than the other mods I've done for positive to negative to positive display. What makes it difficult here is, again, keeping track of your springs. It's always a little bit longer for me to mod these when I'm on video because I'm trying to explain to you guys what to do. And then also trying to position them. The smaller the spring, the easier it is for them to pop out, and that just adds to your time. The glue on this particular one was also a little bit more stubborn than other ones in the past, so I had to take my time there. So the point there is, mods will vary depending on your skill level, but also vary depending on the type of watch you have. Kind of stick to your routine if you have one. Go slow. If you're getting frustrated or you're lost, put the watch down, take a break, read up, ask for help. There's a very good custom Casio mod group on Facebook, which has helped me immensely. I'm also a member on there as Michael, and I will put a link to that Facebook group below. Ask questions you have if you're getting stuck, and that group is very friendly. People there who are knowledgeable, from beginners to moderate to people who know much more than me that do crazy mods. Put your question out there and see if somebody can help you, and then come back. If you would like to see more mod creations I've done, please follow me on Instagram at watchNcarry, all lower in case. I'll put that in the description. Please subscribe and like this video if you can. And as always, thank you so much, guys, for watching. Mod on, and I will see you guys on the next one.